Good day, everyone. This is the report of Group 2. Our lesson for today is about capitalizations, punctuations, writing numbers, and abbreviations.
In capitalization, always remember that you should capitalize proper nouns and the first letter of the first word in every sentence. But you also sometimes capitalize the first word of a quote. Don't capitalize after the colon, but there are exceptions. So basically, there are 8 rules in capitalization. The first one is capitalize the first word of a sentence. For example, the cat is sleeping. Where did they put the book? Hey, it's great to see you. How have you been? As you can see, every first letter of the first word in the sentence are all capitalized. The second rule is capitalize names and other proper nouns. We should always capitalize people's name. For example, my favorite author, Jane Austen. Tom and Diane meet at Judy's house. Have you met my dog, Boomer? The names of cities, countries, companies, regions, and political are all proper nouns, so we should capitalize them too. For example, we experienced some beautiful Southern California weather last fall when we attended a Catholic wedding in San Diego. Southern California is a region and San Diego is a city. That's why it should be capitalized. You should also capitalize words like mom and grandpa when they are used as a form of address. For example, just wait until mom sees this. The third rule is don't capitalize after the colon usually. For example, I have one true passion colon Wabmat racing. But there is a common exception. When the word following the colon is proper noun, it should be capitalized. For example, there is only one place I want to visit colon New York City. The other exception is when the word following the colon for one or more complete sentence. For example, Maggie wears a brimmed cap at all times for these two reasons, colon, strong light often gives her a headache. She also likes the way it looks. The fourth rule is capitalize the first word of a quote. Capitalize the first word of a quote when the quote is a complete sentence. For example, Mario asked, "What is everyone doing this weekend?" Stacy answered, "My sister and I are going to the water park." But don't capitalize the first word of a partial quotes. For example, Gretchen said she was way too busy to join the gym. Another example is Mr. Thompson described the rules as extremely difficult to understand if you don't have a law degree.
Number 5. Capitalize days, months, and holidays but not seasons. The name of days, months, and holidays are proper nouns, so you should capitalize them. For examples, I hate Mondays. Another examples, Tom's birthday is in June. The names of seasons are not proper nouns, so there is no need to capitalize them. Correct. Another example, having a summer birthday is the best. Number 6, capitalize most words in titles. The capitalization rules for title books, movies, and other works vary a little between style guides. In general, you should capitalize the first words, all nouns, all verbs, all adjectives, and all proper nouns. That means you should lowercase articles, conjunctions, and prepositions. However, some style guides says to capitalize conjunctions and prepositions that are no longer than 5 letters. Example, sense and sensibility is better than Pride and Prejudice. Another example, the first movie of the series is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Number 7, capitalize cities, countries, nationalities, and language. The names of cities, countries, nationalities, and language are proper nouns, so you should capitalize them. Example, English is made up many languages including Latin, German, and French. Another example, my mother is British and my father is Dutch. Number 8, capitalize time periods and events. Sometimes. Specific periods, eras, and historical events that have proper names should be capitalized. For example, most of the World War I veterans are now deceased. Another example, middle school students often enjoy studying the social changes that took place during the Roaring Twenties.
Period. Used at the end of a declarative and imperative sentence. When we say declarative, it is a sentence that makes statement. Declarative sentence states a fact. A declarative does not ask questions, give order, or express strong emotions. For example, we are taking notes today. A declarative always ends with a period, and when it comes to imperative sentence give a direct command. It can end in a period or exclamation mark, depending on the forcefulness of the command, but in using period, it means it uses a period that are not forceful enough to warrant an exclamation point. For example, get out your notes.
Question mark. Use at the end of a question. For example, what day is today? Exclamation mark. Use for sentences showing extreme excitement or strong emotion or with an interjection. For example, I won the lottery. You are not my friend.
Commas. When using commas, you have to pause it slightly, and here are the following rules in using commas. Rule number 1. Use commas to separate 3 or more words or phrases in a series. Like for example, yung gumagawa ka ng list of items but in a sentence form. Like for example, Susan bought a red shirt, borrowed a green skirt, and found a yellow hat. Rule number 2. Use a comma after 2 or more introductory prepositional phrases. Ginagamit yung comma to emphasize the introductory prepositional phrases. Like for example, for thousands of years, shipbuilders built large ships. Then rule number 3, use a comma after introductory phrases. Similar to the number 2, ginagamit yung comma after a introductory phrases. Then rule number 4, use commas to set off words that are unnecessary in the sentence. Ginagamit yung comma to set off yung mga words na hindi naman gaanong importante sa sentence. Like for example, ships, you might imagine, were invented a long time ago. Rule number 5, use commas to set off an appositive. Appositive is a noun or group of words that explains another noun. For example, the Egyptians, the inventors of sails, built barges. Rule number 6. Use commas to show a pause after an introductory word and to set off names used in direct address. Ginagamit yung comma pag ang kasunod ng introductory word is a name. Like for example, yes, Mr. Clemens does work here. Rule number 7. Use a comma before, or, but, or, and when they are combining two sentences. Ginagamit yung comma when you are combining 2 or more sentences. Like for example, many teachers work at MCS, but other teachers work at JHC.
Rule number 8, which means when writing out dates, insert a comma after the day. Do not insert a comma if the year is missing. Just for example, the bus trip began on July 5, 2012 and lasted 4 weeks. Rule number 9, meaning that introduction words like introduction phrases require a comma. After introduction words, gumagamit tayo ng comma para ma-separate yung introductory word or yung mga beginning words sa independent clause. Like for example, because camels provide such as practical means of transportation, comma, Nomans use them regularly. Rule number 10. Use the commas before and after the name of a state or a country. Or it means that we need to be specific. It needs to specify the city of a country rather than the zip code of a country. Just for example, I visited Tasco, Mexico on my last vacation. Rule number 11. Use a comma or pair of commas to set off an abbreviated title or degree following a person's name, or it means that to set off titles with commas. The other example for this is Sarah Martinez, DS, is our family dentist. Rule number 12. Use comma or commas to set off to means also, or it means when using the word to, you only need to use a comma before it for emphasis. According to the Chicago Manual of Style, a comma before to should
used to note an abrupt in thought. For example, Dr. Warren, to, rode the bus with us. Rule number 13. Use comma or commas to set off quotations, or it means use a commas before and after a quotation within a sentence. For example, quotation fossils, Mrs. Mayet said, quotation are found in heart and rock. Rule number 14. Use a comma at the end of a greetings or closing of a letter. Means do not put commas around the essential relative clauses, meaning clauses that are essential to understanding the head noun. The other example is Mr. Perryman, And the last is rule number 15. Use commas to avoid confusion. The other example for this, to Monica, Janice was slightly annoying.
What is quotation mark? So, quotation mark are known as neutral, vertical, straight, typewriter. The left and right marks are identical, are known as typographic. So, the quotation mark gives the actual words which the direct speech use it. They use for directly cited. How to type quotation marks? Press and hold the Alt key, and then type 0147 for the opening single, and Alt followed by 0148 for the closing single quotation mark.
Apostrophe. Apostrophe is a mark used to indicate the omission of letter or figure, the possessive case, or the plural of letter or figure. Do not use an apostrophe in a possessive pronoun like hers or theirs. Ang apostrophe ay isang bantas na marka at minsan ay isang tanda. Sa English, ginagamit ito para sa ilang layunin tulad ng pagmamarka at pag-alis ng isa o higit pang mga titik. Halimbawa na lang ang pag-ikli ng do not na magiging don't, would not na magiging won't, cannot na magiging can't.
So let's talk about hyphen. Hyphen is used to join words together, so we commonly use it to separate digits, phone numbers, and serial numbers. Rule number 1, hyphen is used to divide words at the end of a line. So take note to make the break only between the syllables. Example is preference and selling. Rule number 2, use a hyphen in compound numbers. Compound numbers are numbers between 21 and 99, except 30, 40, 50, up to 90. So, example of this is 31 and 49. Next rule is use a hyphen to spell out a fraction. So, always remember na pag i-spell out natin ang fraction, we need to use a hyphen. Example is 1/2 and 2/3. The next rule is use a hyphen or hyphens in a certain compound nouns. Example is sister-in-law and son-in-law. So, there are 3 types of compound words: hyphenated, closed form, and open form. So, when we say hyphenated, it pertains to the words with a hyphen between them. So, maraming hyphenated ang nagiging closed compound form. Example is the word teenager. It's supposed to be hyphenated, but as time goes by, we are now writing it without hyphen. So, next rule is use a hyphen with prefixes ex, self, and all. So, remember, prefixes comes before the word. So, example is, the ex-mayor was a caring woman. I wish I had more self-confidence. God is an all-knowing being. Last rule is use a hyphen in a compound adjective when it comes before the word. Example is, she's a well-trained athlete. He is a kind-hearted man. So we are using the hyphen to create compound adjectives that are describing the noun. Hyphenated compound adjectives serves as a single adjectives when it is before a noun. So take note that we are not using hyphen if the noun comes first before the adjective.
Dashes and parentheses. Rule number 1. Use a dash to show a sudden break or change in thought or speech. If it's in the middle of a sentence, use a second dash to show the end of the sudden break. For example, Dr. Owens dash my neighbor dash works at the hospital. Rule number 2. Use the parentheses to set off words that define or helpfully explain a word in a sentence. For example, flight training consists of training in simulators. Open parentheses, device that reproduce the conditions of spaceflight. Close parentheses, and other equipment.
So to summarize my topic, colons are used in sentences to show that something is following, like a quotation, example, or list, while semicolons are Use to join two independent clauses or two complete thoughts that could stand alone as complete sentences.
Writing numbers. There are 8 rules for proper way for writing numbers. Rule number 1. Spell out number that you can write in 1 or 2 words. Example, 25, 15. Rule number 2. Use numerals for numbers of more than 2 words. Example, the coach traveled 392 miles. Rule number 3. Spell out any number that begin with a sentence or reword the sentence so it doesn't begin with the numbers. Example, 3,100 coaches existed in England in 1836. For rule number 4, write a very large number as a numeral followed by the word million or billion. Example of this is 23 billion.
The rule number 5 said, if related numbers appear in the same sentence, use all numerals. For example, for a trip of 390 miles, drivers change horses every 20 miles. So, rule number 6, spell out ordinal numbers such as first or second. So, for example, first, comma, we went to the movies, semicolon. Second, we went to eat. Rule number 7, use words to express time unless it is exact time. For example, the play will begin at 6 o'clock. So, rule number 8, use numerals to express dates, house and street numbers, apartment or room numbers, telephone numbers, page numbers, amount of money that more than 2 words, and percentage. Write out the word percent. For example, the word 40%. The book was $1.25.
And the last one is using abbreviations. We use abbreviations to take less time to say or write the abbreviated form of the full word than to spell out every single word. Here are the rules for using abbreviations. Rule number 1. This is the most common, using the abbreviations Mr., Miss, Mrs., and Doctor before names. For example, Mr. Clemens, Dr. Michael. Rule number 2. Abbreviate professional or academic titles that follows names. For example, James Nichols, RN. RN stands for Registered Nurse. Another example, Victoria Balbio, LPT. LPT stands for Licensed Professional Teacher. Rule number 3. Use all capitals and no periods for abbreviations that are pronounced letter by letter. For example, NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Rule number 4. We use the abbreviations AM or antemeridiem and PM or postmeridiem for telling the exact time. For example, 8:42 a.m., 7:50 p.m. Rule number 5. For years, we use BC, before Christ, and AD, Anno Domini. For example, 724 BC, 1999 AD. Rule number 6. Abbreviate days and months only in charts and lists. For example, Oct for October, Nov for November, Mon for Monday, Chu for Tuesday. And the last rule, rule number 7, on envelopes, abbreviate words such as street, ST, avenue, AVE, road, RD, boulevard, BLVD, court, CT, drive, DR, and circle, CIR.